All right, welcome back, guys, to day 5 of our course. We're gonna pick up from where we left off from yesterday. Um, Today, our subject will be Python loops and data manipulation, which is a very exciting topic um, because loops is gonna be like your main tool, right? It gives you a lot of power. Up to this point, we've been able to make like static variables. We talked about different data structures like lists and dictionaries, but when you have multiple data values and data structures like lists where you have different values within it, um, you're limited to what you can do without loops, right? And we've experienced that going through some of these exercises. Like I believe it was like day 3. We had to put a pin on some of the exercises because it was just very difficult to reach the expected outcome without iterating through the values um, of the uh, the data structure. So we should all be looking at my VS Code on Codespaces. If not, please let me know. Thomas, I will add you to the Slack channel the moment we go on break. I believe I added, say with Dante. I'll add you guys on there. But all right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with loops. So loops, the power of computation, right? So it's in the name, right? A loop is being able to iterate through a certain action, right? Whether we are doing a action over and over again, or we're iterating through what we call an iterable, right? Loops allows us to do something repeatedly over and over again until we meet a condition, right? The first loop that we are going to talk about today is going to be our for loops, right? And the way that we declare a for loop, and it's kind of in the name as well, is the keyword of for, right? Um, so the basic syntax is going to be as follows, where we are going to start it using the keyword for. And here we have a small example of how it would look like, where you would use the keyword for, and you would set up what I like to call a temporary variable to be able to reference the item that you are currently iterating through, right? So this temporary variable can be whatever your heart desires. It could be X, it could be I. In this scenario, they called it an item, something that lets you know as a developer what you're iterating through. So after you declare your temporary variable, you specify what you want to loop through, right? Um, and here in this situation, we say for item in collection. So in this scenario, I know that there's some kind of data structure called collection that I'm going to be iterating through. And as I iterate through this data structure, the item that I'm iterating through at whatever given moment is going to be referenced as item, right? This is the basic syntax of starting your for loop. After you declare the for loop, you, like everything else, you give it a colon, which would then allow you to go into a code block in the next line and indenting it to the right. So, have any questions so far about this syntax? Okay. Here we have another basic example of what it will look like. For I in X, right? I here is our temporary variable. Once again, it can be whatever you want to call it. And we're going to iterate through something called X, right? X could be um, a list or a dictionary or even a string, which we will get to in a bit. but anything that can be iterated through. Now, what does it mean by iterating through, right? Well, we can iterate through a range of a number. For example, let's say the number 10, right? If I wanted to iterate through the number of 10, right, starting from 1 to 10, as I iterate through it, I would go through every single number from 1 up to 10, right? So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. If I was iterating through a string, I would iterate through every single character from start to finish or whatever range I specify. If I was iterating through a list, I would iterate through every individual value within the list and so on and so forth, et cetera, right? That's for iterables, right? Some kind of sequence. It could be a sequence of numbers, a sequence of other data structures, a sequence of characters, a sequence of strings. Which brings us to our first actual real example here, which is creating a list, right? As we covered recently, I believe day 3. Here we have a list called nums. And this list is consisted of 5 different integers ranging from 1 to 5. And we start our real iteration of the day where we start for x in nums, right? Going back to our example of our syntax, for x, we specify some kind of temporary variable, and then we let it know what we want to iterate through. Well, I want to iterate through whatever nums is. And as we already know and established, nums is a list of integers. So this will start this for loop, right? By default, when you start a loop, if you're looping through an iterable like a list or a dictionary, it's going to start from the front, right? Here, we didn't specify a start, we didn't specify an end. All you're saying is, hey, I want to iterate through nums, and as I iterate through this iterable, x is going to be the value that I am referencing as I loop through it, right? So by default, this is going to start at the beginning of my iterable, right? So when this for loop first starts, what is x going to be?
2.
Who said, you said 2?
Yes.
No, it's going to be 1, but good guess, right? It's going to be 1, right? We're going to start the for loop at the very beginning of our initial loop. The first item we are going to iterate through, as we saw here, we're going to start at the beginning of my iterable. This is my iterable. The first item in my iterable is 1, right? Not to get confused with like the first being index 1, right? We're talking about the first item of my iterable. Oh, okay. Andrew says he thought he meant, I meant what it was going to print out. And you are absolutely correct in that context, right? It's going to grab the first item in my iterable, which is the integer 1. And that's what x is going to be. Now, when this for loop starts, it's going to go into our code block and run the following code. The only instructions that we gave right now is to print the output of x multiplied by 2. And as we already established, when this first starts off, x is going to be 1. So it's going to multiply 1 times 2, giving us 2, and therefore printing out 2. That is the first iteration of our loop. How many iterations are we going to do in this loop? Well, that's going to vary on the size of whatever nums is, right? Because we didn't specify an endpoint, it's going to do this from start to finish. Therefore, every single item within this list is going to iterate through. So this will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different iterations. So I should see 5 different values being printed out. Well, after the first iteration runs, x then proceeds to the next item within my iterable. So x is no longer 1, it now becomes 2, right? So then it says print 2 times 2, so it should give me 4. There's nothing else that follows this. So we now proceed to the following iteration, which is the next item within my iterable, which is 3. And then once again, we run this line of code. 3 times 2 is 6, and then so on and so forth. So now when I run this, I should be able to see 5 different values be printed out, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, which is expected. It is the multiplication of my intervals by 2, right? Do I have any questions so far on how for loops are established, what any part of this syntax means, or what the for loop is doing? To see the right reflection of what x is, I can remove this multiplication. I'm just going to print the raw value of whatever x is. And as you see here, as this loops through my interval, the x takes the identity of the item it is currently iterating through, right? X becomes 1, and then it becomes 2, 3, so on and so forth. Stop me if at any point it looks like I'm going too fast or you have any questions. All right. So once again, we have the previous scenario, but we're going to build off on it a little bit, right? Here we go again. We have nums, which is 1 through 5. And now we have another variable here, which is an empty list, right? There's no values within this list. It's empty, right? It's just open and close square brackets, so I know there's nothing in here. After these values, or I'm sorry, these variables are established, I once again start a for loop. But this time, the code that I'm doing after each iteration is different, right? For x and nums, this is telling me that I'm going to start a for loop through nums and iterate through every single value inside of this list. So the first time this runs, x is going to equal 1. And as I see here, I am creating a variable within this list called molt, right? And molt, the value of molt is going to be the output of whatever x times 2 is. Well, the first time this runs, x is going to be 1, so it's going to be multiplied by 2. Therefore, molt is going to give me 2 for the first time. And then notice what I'm doing next. I call molt underscore nums. Well, what's molt underscore nums in this context? Well, this is the empty list that I had declared earlier, right? It calls that list. And we use one of the methods that list has, which is the dot append method, right? This is a method that we utilize in lists to add something to a list, right? This was once again covered on day 3, right? So we are going to append, well, what are we appending? We are appending the variable molt into this list, right? So the first time we run this for loop, it multiplies that 1 by 2. Therefore, molt is equal to 2. We then add molt into this empty list. And that concludes the first iteration. So it resets. X now proceeds to the next value in this list, which is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And then we add that to the new list, and we continue this process until we're finished with the for loop of nums. Finally, at the end of this process, we print out both nums and molt nums. And as we see here, we have 2 different distinct lists, right? Nums stay the same. We don't change anything to the original list. But as we perform this for loop, we multiplied the value of whatever we were iterating through and saved the output into molt. Now, I need you to note that this did not impact the original list that we were iterating through, right? This did not impact that, right? It almost makes a copy of it in essence, right? In short, it makes a copy of the item that we're iterating through, and we use that copy of that value to do something. We created a different variable, and this variable is what we added to the empty list. But the original list of nums was left unaffected. So when we printed out nums and molt nums, we saw 2 distinct lists, one being the original and the second one being the output of the original but multiplied by 2. Right? Do I have any questions so far about how we can iterate through some kind of sequence like this, create new variables, and then assign it to a whole other list? While you guys are coming in, please take a 30 seconds to sign in to the attendance form. And while you guys do that, I just want to reemphasize like the importance of lists. You guys now see how powerful they are. We're able to iterate through data structures, and as we're doing these loops, we're able to perform other actions, um, and complete create new variables, which is pretty awesome. And I'm sure for those of you who this is the first time you see you're seeing for loops, now you can kind of understand why that one exercise of finding the numbers that were repeating and the numbers between those repeated numbers, now it's trying to make sense of why I mentioned like how I don't see how we could do this without a for loop, right? So after this class, you could probably go back and probably accomplish that task. But let's go ahead and move forward. So we saw us iterating through a list with integers. Let's see something different. Here we're going to iterate through a list of URLs, right? And these URLs specifically are of a data type of string, right? These are strings, right? We essentially are iterating through this list of different strings, which are URLs, and we're doing something, right? We're going to conduct a membership check, and depending on the outcome of the membership check, we're going to do one action or another. Right. So the first step here, we'll read it from top to bottom. Right. The list is created. It has two URLs, and then immediately following that, we start a for loop. Right. One thing to take into note, which people who first start coding, they forget is that everything here after this colon that's indented, all this is within this loop, right? So every time this loop runs, these these 6 lines of code are being ran. How many times is this going to run? Well, however long this URL is, right? Because we're running this for loop for every single item that URL has. So this 6 lines of code are going to run at least 6 times, right? So we start this for loop, and we immediately begin with an if or elif check, right? So we're doing if checks. The first if is saying if Apple is in, right? This is a membership check. We're checking if Apple exists within something. If Apple in URL or Dell in URL, right? So it's checking whether the string is inside of URL or if Dell is inside of URL. And if any one of these passes, we're going to print out the interpolated string of computer site followed by the URL, right? Now, if this fails, we're going to move over to the next elif statement, where it's now going to check if the current URL we are looping through is either Reddit or Facebook. And if so, we're going to print out a different string, which will now say social media site, as well as the current URL that we are looping through. If this fails, it's going to default to the else statement, which is going to print out the string that says other site, followed by the URL that we are currently on. And when we run this, Teresa asks, what does the F in front of the strings represent? So this is part of lesson 1 if you would like to revisit later. But essentially what we are doing here is we are formatting a string, right? So as you see here, we are able to create strings on their own, right? Using quotation marks, but we also have the ability to create a string and format it with existing variables, right? So that's what this is doing. The F stands for formatting. This lets your computer know, hey, everything that follows this F that's enclosed within quotation marks is going to be a formatted string. Therefore, there might be variables that you are adding within here. So keep that in mind, right? So that's how we start an interpolated string with that F symbol. And then immediately following that, we add the quotation marks and we can write a string as normal. But notice that whenever we're ready to add some kind of variable in here, we enclose it with curly braces to specify that this is some kind of variable that holds a value, right? And as you see here, when this runs, we print out the string, but instead of having URL, it's replaced with the current value that's saved into URL. So once again, from the top, we run this. This starts a for loop and begins iterating through the values of this list. We don't specify a start and an end. When we just do something like this, where we do for URL and URLs and we're iterating through a list, by default, it's going to start at the very beginning. So it's going to grab the first item, which is going to be Nike.com, right? So URL during the first iteration is going to equal to Nike.com. So it's going to check, hey, is Apple or Dell in Nike.com? Well, no. So it's going to fail this check. And it's going to go to the elif. It's going to check, is Nike.com, or I'm sorry, I misspoke. Is Reddit inside of Nike.com or Facebook in Nike.com? Once again, it's going to fail. So it's going to default to this else statement, therefore printing out other sites. And now we are done with this code block. So the next item in our for loop comes into play, which is Reddit. So now we're on our second iteration, and Reddit goes through the exact same process. It's checking whether Apple or Dell exists within the string of Reddit, which is incorrect. So it goes to the elif statement, and it passes this check right here. Reddit in URL, which is true. The word Reddit does exist in the string of this specific URL. Therefore, this passes, and it prints out social media site followed by the current URL that we are iterating through, which is reddit.com. And this loop continues until it finishes the iteration of the list of URLs, giving us this output. Do I have any questions on this exercise?
Yeah, is it looking exactly for Apple, or will Apple be picked up in apple.com?
Right. So this is a membership check. It is looking for the pattern of Apple. So yes.
Okay.
So if you recall membership checks, I believe it was conditional statements. We have membership checks right here. We were checking if something exists in something or not, right? So we were able to do it with lists. Is this the only example I gave? Stand by. 9 in the, oh no, I gave this example. W in this grid coordinate, or I believe this is a direction, an azimuth. Right, so this check if the string of W exists in this string of 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth, right? So it's checking for this. It understands that there might be other stuff behind this or afterwards, but we're not checking for that. We're only specifically checking for this word or this character. Does this exist inside of you? Yes. Now, there's other ways that you can be very specific on what comes after or before, but in this situation, it's not checking for that. It's just checking if the string of W exists inside of this string. Make sense?
Yep, crystal clear.
Right on. Any other questions, guys? Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. Let's go ahead and move forward. So use case, when would we want to use a for loop? And this specific for loop, because as you're going to see, there's other ways to use for loops. And there's going to be other types of loops as well, right? This specific for loop, right, is if you want to iterate through elements of a list, right? Who here is familiar with JavaScript? Who started with JavaScript? Raise your hand and you can react, I think. Okay, Trevor, I saw Trevor physically raise his hand. Michael, okay. Now, for those of you who would like to know how was this done in JavaScript, I can show you very briefly. It's gonna look like a bunch of errors because this is configured with a Python kernel, so it won't recognize JavaScript. But it will look something like, I'm so rusty. For I think let it's been forever. Let I equals 0, I less than 5. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. I less than 5. I plus plus. Right? Something like this. And then you would say if Apple in URLs bracket I or Dell in URLs bracket I, right? It will look something like this. You would have to specify that you're trying to access the list of URLs with whatever I is, right? It should look something fairly similar to this. I have not touched JavaScript in months, so I'm sorry if my syntax is a little off. But is this correct, Trevor? Does it look familiar to your JavaScript notes, right? So it's a little different. And then I'm gonna show you how this comes to play later. This specific part right here. But normally you can't just iterate through elements like this in JavaScript. You would have to kind of set up some kind of temporary variable like to 0, and then you give it a range, or like a condition, and then you give it a way for this condition to be broken, which is I plus plus. But hopefully it kind of gives you an example of how this would look like in JavaScript and how this is represented in Python. All right, but yeah, going back to the use case, this would be very useful if you're entering through a bunch of elements, right, in a list. So you saw it here in a list, like you don't necessarily care about a range, right? You have a data structure that has values in it, and you just gotta go through them. If you're trying to do something multiple times, for example, if you're trying to wave to somebody or say hello 5 times, you're not going to iterate through an element with strings hello. There's a different way of how you would do an action, a range of so many times, right? From a range of a number. Here specifically, you're not necessarily trying to do something so many times. You're trying to iterate through an amount of items, and it'll make a little bit more sense as we progress through the lesson. Right now, what if I don't necessarily have something to iterate through, right? But I want to conduct an action as I just mentioned, a certain number of times, like saying hello 5 times back to back. Would you do something like this? For I in 5, print hello. Not exactly, but we're on the right track, right? Python won't know what this means, right? It might try to think this is a variable that's some kind of iterable. If you want to specify your for loop to do something a certain number of times, you have to be very specific with it. And the way that you do that is by using the range method, right? Unlike before that we were iterating through some kind of iterable that has X amount of elements inside of it. Here we need to specify that we are using a number, and that number is going to dictate how many times we do something, right? Or before, what dictated how many times we did something was the quantity of elements inside of an iterable. Make sense? Right? We did this for however many items were inside of this data structure. If there's 3 items in here, we're going to iterate 3 times. If there's 100, we're going to iterate 100 times. If we didn't have some kind of iterable like this, we can use a number to set a range, right? And that's where the range method comes into play. The range allows you to specify where you want to start, where you want to stop, and as you recall from using slicing and with lists, we can also specify step, right? How many times do we want to, or how many steps do we want to step over as we iterate through our for loop, right? One thing I want you guys to know is which ones are optional and which ones are not. By default, you need at least one item in your range method, right? That one item is the stop, right? That one item is the stop. Something very similar to this for I in range of 5, right? This should look like range 5. That one item is going to specify where you want to stop, right? So by default, you need at least one integer in here, right? Which will let it know where you want to start. Now, the start and the step are optional. By default, when you give it that one number, it's going to be up to, but not including. And the start by default will start at 0, right? So when you don't give it a start point, it will default to 0. And that's very important. When you first start coding and you're using the range method, or you're iterating through something, or iterating through a range of numbers, it's very easy to forget that the for loop starts at 0, right? Sometimes you want to iterate through a range from 1 through 5, right? Or 1 through 10, or start at 1. By default, it will start at 0, so be aware of that. If you do not want to start at 0, then you have to give it that additional number to let it know where you want to start. And then the step, once again, very optional as well, is how many numbers do you want to step over as you do this for loop, or as the text here specifies in a different manner. How many times do you want to increment, right, between each integer? And you'll see that in action in a little bit. But by default, as everything else, as we've seen, it's going to be 1. So here's our first example. We have for I in range of 20, and we're going to print I. And I'm just going to go ahead and run this so you can see this from the start. As I mentioned before, the default of your loop is going to be 0 because we did not specify the default is 0, right? And this is going to go up to, but not including, our stop, right? Notice here 0 to 19. But Roger, I put 20 here. Yes, it's going to be up to, but not including. So be aware of that, right? And I say it because once you guys start coding, and you're doing like coding challenges or exercises, if you're doing leak code, you might be getting like, you might fail a test case. You're like, why is it not working? And you don't realize that you're not fully iterating through whatever data structure you're trying to iterate through. So you are not getting the complete output. So be aware of that. The stop is up to, but not included. Do I have any questions so far? Trevor says, is there a way to iterate backwards with a range method similar to I minus minus? Yes, there is. I want to start at 20. I want to end at 0, and I want to go -1. I believe is the way to do this. There you go. Right. So we're starting at 20. We're going to end at 0, and I want to decrease as I do this for loop, right? So I want my number to decrease, not go positive. Does that answer your question, Trevor? Right on.
I have a question. So if we were to go 20, 0, -3, it would skip every three numbers if I'm understanding this correctly.
That is correct. If I switch this to 3 and we run this, it'll start at 20 and then it should go like 17, I think. Yeah. 20, 17, 14, 11, so on and so forth. And same thing with this. If we do 0, 20, and then 3, it'll go from 0 to 20, but it'll skip up to 3 numbers, right? So 0, 1, 2, it'll go to the third number afterwards. That's what that step does, right? Notice that if I'm using the step, I have to specify the start. If I don't do that, it's going to think that this is the start and this is the end. All right, so be aware that you get to weird stuff. So it doesn't even give anything. So if you're going to specify a stop, you're probably gonna have to give it, I misspoke. If you're going to try to specify a step, you're gonna have to give it the start, the stop, and the step. So it knows that that third parameter that you're passing in is the step. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Right on. Okay. So use cases, as you already saw, when you're not trying to iterate through an iterable like a list or a dictionary or the characters in a string, but you want to do or perform a certain action so many times, right? This is very helpful. All right. Now, the next powerful method that I really like is enumerate, right? What if you want to iterate through an element, right? Some kind of list or a dictionary, but at the same time, you want to track what index you are on as you iterate through, right? The enumerate method allows you to do that, right? And I'll show you the difference right here, right? So here, I have the fruits, the list of fruits. If we use the method that we were using before, it would have been for fruit in fruits, print fruit, right? And I'm able to iterate through this list and print out every individual element of this list. But what if I wanted to have access to the index of whatever apples is? Right now, it's not a big issue because only 3 items. But if I have like 100, 200 items and I'm trying to keep count of what index I'm at and use the index as a reference to move stuff, right now, maybe it's a little difficult to conceptualize when this will be helpful. And to be completely honest with you, as I'm explaining this, I can't even think of one, but I've used it so many times. So I can just take my word for it. It's gonna be helpful. But if I want to be able to keep track of the index that I'm currently working on, that's where the enumerate function comes into play. And the way that you use it is fairly similar to the range, but it only takes one item, right? That one item is the iterable. There's no start, right? There's no that actually maybe there is, and I haven't used it. Yeah, I think I'm dumb. I think there is from start. Go to definition. Stand by. Okay, it looks like it might take, you are able to update where it starts. I've never had to use that, but it's nice to know. Just be aware of that. So you can give it an iterable, and it does have another optional parameter. By default, it's set to 0, but you are able to override start and start at a different point, which is pretty cool. But let's get to the example, right? So one thing you're going to notice right off the bat on the syntax for this enumerate method, notice that now there's 2 values here, right? There's index and fruit. Well, when you iterate through this, if you want to be able to have access to the element that you're iterating through and the index, you also need to be able to give it a way to handle that. Now you're getting two different values in return. So you have to provide another value or variable name to be able to reference that index. Notice that the first one is the index, and the second one is that temporary value to represent the element you're looping through, right? And we'll see here as I run this, we're able to, let's comment this out. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to print out fruit to begin with. As I run this, it's going to print out bananas, apples, and cherries, which is awesome. But let's also print out index and fruit. As we see here, as it loops through, the first iteration, it's index 0, and is grabbing the first item of our iterable, which is bananas. It prints those out, and then it increases within the for loop. The index is now 1, and we're grabbing the item at index 1, which is apples, and then so on and so forth. The naming doesn't matter here. The placement is what matters. What happens if I say for fruits, comma, index? What do you think is going to happen? For fruits index. Right? It doesn't matter, right? This is still the index, and this is the fruit. So the placement is set in stone. Just because you call it a fruit and the other one you're calling it index is not going to switch the placement, right? So be aware of that. Notice here that I'm printing out fruits, but what is fruit? It's the index, and it's not fruit. Here I'm printing out index, but it's printing out the fruit in this area, right? So the syntax for using enumerate is going to take first the index and then the fruit. So be aware of that. Because then it might confuse you when you start, if you don't put them in the right order, right? By default, the first item that you have to give is going to be the index. The second item is whatever temporary name you want to create for the items that you're iterating through, right? So be aware of that. And then finally, I used the interpolated string here to kind of show how we can do index, followed by index, and then the fruit. Do you have any questions on enumerate? This is helpful. Enumerate is helpful when you need to keep track of the position of each element in the collection. You might encounter a situation where you are asked that, hey, like fine, loop through this iterable, and this is a very simplified coding exercise or coding challenge you might encounter. Loop through this iterable and find all the A's, and then return to me a list of their positions, right? Enumerate will be a very good way to use that. You iterate through it using enumerate. Whenever you encounter an A, you just save the index somewhere and then add it to a list, right? Very simplified version, but that way you can keep track of the positions of the elements that you're looping through, and so on and so forth. I've seen multiple coding challenges like that. And the reason why it's important to be able to use this to keep track of positions in a coding challenge, because once you all get accepted into Platoon and you try to apply to a software engineering jobs, the way they test their applicants is through coding challenges, right? So you're gonna be expected to code in front of another software engineer, and solve some kind of challenge, right? So the problems never end. All right. So we talked about for loops. We talked about for loops and in an iterable, in a range. We talked about enumerate. Oh, now let's talk about a different iterable. here we have dictionaries, right? And just like a list, it is also an iterable. Now, one is an ordered iterable and the other one is an unordered, but they're both still iterables, so you can still iterate through them. And you can do it in three different ways, right? This one specifically is iterating through the results of the dot items method. And if you recall from Monday's class when we talked about, was it Monday's class? Ordered, yeah, unordered data structures. The dot item is going to return to you a list-like object that's going to have key value pairs. So when you try to use a for loop on something that has key value pairs, like this specific method does, you once again, just like the enumerate method, you have to give it a way to handle the multiple values that are being given to you as you iterate through it, right? So we have to specify the key and the value so we know how to handle them, right? Here we have a dictionary. Uh, these are phones or phone numbers, I would say, right? We have key value pairs where the first one is Francisco, followed by his number. Then it's Alex, followed by his number, and then Allison by her number, right? Um, we are going to iterate through this dictionary. We set up the for loop for k comma v. The order of this is key followed by the value, which is why it's in this order. In phones dot items. But what does this return? As we already found out from Monday, when using the dot items method, this is going to return to us a list like items with tuples of our key value pairs. So they should have the first item is going to be Francisco and its value. We're going to print out Francisco's name inside of this interpolated string with the number in here. And it's going to do this for all three of these items. And as we see here, the output, as it iterates through this unordered data structure, it does as such. It grabs the first and the second and the third item within this dictionary and prints it out as we want it to. Now, it's not just items. We can do this with dot keys and we can do this with dot values, right? Let me go ahead and comment this out. We can say for person and phones dot keys print person. And I need to uncomment this out. There we go. And as you see here, as I loop through the dot keys, I get person. And then once again, I can do the exact same thing for values for phone numbers and phones dot values. Print phone numbers. Right. So it's not just dot items. You can use dot keys. You can use dot values. Well, what's gonna happen if I do for I in phones? What do you think this is gonna return to me? If I just straight up just do some kind of for loop, like a regular iterable, like I did with the list, and I call the dictionary name, what is this gonna do for me? What would this return?
Is it going to grab each one of those individual strings?
No, it's gonna iterate through the keys, right? So by default, if you don't specify whether you want to get grab keys, items, or values, it'll by default return to you the keys. But good guess. Well, actually, maybe now that I think of it, maybe you did guess correctly. Just said it in a different way. But yeah, so it was able to grab each key individually, but it defaults to the key, right? So if you don't specify values, you won't get values because it defaults to keys.
You were still right. That's not what I meant.
It's all good. All right. So this is a very helpful tool. You're able to iterate through two different iterables, lists, dictionaries, both keys, values, or items. We're gonna take a slight tactical pause here. Time is 6:55. Let's go ahead and come back in 10 minutes. I will see you at 7:05. Oh, thank you, Trevor. I think my mic was muted. Uh, that's actually I think the first time it's happened since we started this. But so Andrew sent me a message, right, and it reminded me of something. But we saw a for loop through a list. We saw a for loop through a dictionary. Um, but there's something else that we can iterate through that we have not seen yet. I don't believe we've seen it yet here. But what else can we iterate through using a for loop?
Indexes.
Not necessarily I mean, yes, we can iterate through a list that has indexes, right? Um, but I think I know where you're getting at, Alvin. So I'll talk about that if I know what you're referring to. So we're doing something like for I in let's do maybe not here. Let's go up here for is to fruit is equal to kiwi for I or for char and fruit print char. Right, this will print out kiwi. If we want to get the indexes, no, we talked about it. I think we use enumerate. Yeah, we use enumerate so we're able to get the indexes. Yeah, not exactly what I was looking for, but the other thing that we can iterate through it's gonna be our strings, right? Because they're technically sequences of characters as well, right? And we use fruit here. We were able to see that we iterated through the individual characters of each string, right? Uh, so although it wasn't a list and it wasn't a dictionary, we are able to iterate through a string and print out their individual characters. One thing to note though is that you aren't able to change the character of the string as you're iterating through it. Because what do we know about strings?
They're mutable.
They're immutable, right? Strings are immutable. They can't be changed. You can reassign a variable a new string, but if I were to do something like uh fruit is equal to apple, this isn't changing the string. This is recreating a whole different variable with a new string called apple, right? So that same concept still applies. You can't change a string. I might be able to recreate a new one using the same variable name. But if I try to do something like char is equal to, let's say, if char is equal to I, then char is going to equal O. And I think this is already, oh, my bad. I just had a brain fart. Okay. What do you think, in theory, looking at these lines of code here, these 3 lines of code, what would happen? In theory, if you're looking at this for the first time, what do you think this is trying to do?
You should get an error.
Well, I will get an error. You're correct, right? Uh, looking at this code, as Thomas just said in the chat, yeah, I'm trying to change I to O. As I'm looping through Kiwi, I go to K, I, W, and I. I'm checking if the character I'm currently iterating through, if at any point, oh my bad, I think I should have done this. My apologies. I was doing this wrong. I should have specified that the string of I. I'm checking if the item I'm looping through, if it equals the string of I, then I want to change it to O. So in theory, from reading this, you would think that it would output Kobo by the end of it, right? Because I would update the I. But it's not gonna work. What the heck? Print fruits. Stand by. Let's get rid of this. There we go. I didn't get an error. I don't know why. I should get an error. If this is a regular Python file, they should have given me an error. It would say that I wouldn't be able to change it, right? Because string is type of immutable. Jupyter Notebooks, it's a little slow in the thought process. It just doesn't understand that this shouldn't be changed. By default, it's still gonna give me Kiwi, which is correct, right? This should not be changed. But the moment that this runs, it should know that, hey, this is not correct. You can't do this, right? Character is a type immutable or something very similar to that verbiage, and it should not be able to change. So this should give me an error here, but it does not. But yeah, so just be aware of that. Now, what if I try to do something like this? For fruit in fruits, if fruit is equal to, but let's say apples, I'm gonna say fruit is equal to kiwi. Should this work? It should, right? Because lists are mutable, right? They can be changed. We can delete and remove stuff. It should work. And it did not work. Fruit is equal to kiwi. It's probably because I'm looping through it right now as we're doing it. I might have to yeah. It's probably because I'm looping through this. I'm probably gonna want to create a new different list, but that's okay. What do we say? Fruit. We can do this for I in range of fruits. If fruits index I, there we go. So we're not looping directly with the item. It's equal to apples. Oh, fruits I is equal to kiwi. Now it should work. For I in range of lame fruits. There we go. Okay, so now I had to change it. Earlier, it wasn't working because I was actively looping through a list. And as I got to an item in the list, I tried to change it mid-loop, which does not work. In a regular IDE that isn't Jupyter Notebooks, it should have given me an error, but it just wasn't giving me anything. But now I changed the for loop. Instead of looping directly through every single element of the list, what I did is I looped through a specific range. Well, what range was that? Well, first and foremost, I got the length of what this list was. There's 3 items in here. So this method here, length of fruits, is going to return to me the value of 3, right? And then this takes a spot. So this essentially ends up being 3, right? So I say for I in range of 3. Make sense so far? Now that I have the length of the list I'm trying to iterate through, I use that value of that number to specify what item in this list I'm trying to access. And I compare it. If the item that I'm currently on is equal to apples, I want to change that item to kiwi. Right? So you see how this is different than the one I was doing earlier. And I'll retype it out just to make sure that we can compare and contrast. For fruits and fruits, if fruit is equal to apples, fruit is equal to kiwi. Right? This wouldn't work because this is actively looping through the list, right? For this, I'm not looping through the list, I'm looping through a range of a number. What number is that? Well, whatever the length is of this list. Right? Do we see the difference between these two? Okay, I see yes from Thomas. Angelica says she's a little bit confused. What's as to why it's different? Yeah, that's a good question. Or right for fruit and fruits, what does this do? Let's look at it. Fruits is equal to bananas, and this is an important thing to understand. Is anybody else besides Angelica confused? I need to make sure. Okay, good. I want to make sure that we can solve this. We have bananas, apples, and cherries. I'm glad you guys are vocalizing this. I can't help when no one says they're lost. So I like that you guys are honest about that, right? So here's my list. It has 3 items: bananas, apples, and cherries. Well, we have the first example here where it says 4 fruits and fruits, right? And notice that these are not the same. Fruits and fruits, singular and plural, right? So I am able to do this because they're not the same thing. If you don't want me to confuse you as such, I could say X. But as long as these are not the same words, I can call this fruit, and it helps me understand that I am looping through a list of multiple fruits, and as I loop through, I'm grabbing a fruit, right? So the verbiage of how I am specifying this for loop helps me understand what I'm looping through and the contents of the iterable that I have. So for fruit and fruits, I'm going to say if fruit is equal to apples, I want to change this fruit to kiwi. Right? So what is this doing? When this for loop starts, right? This is the difference between iterating through an iterable while grabbing the element or iterating through a range of a number. This specific for loop, it uses fruit as a placeholder. When this starts, it grabs bananas, right? First iteration. It grabs bananas. And it's going to run the code within this code block. It's going to say, hey, if fruit is equal to apples, I want to do the following. Well, what is fruit right now? Fruit is currently the word bananas. So this is going to fail, right? This fails. There's nothing else within this code block. So then we go into our second iteration. And fruits increases and is now apples, right? So we are now currently within our second iteration. Fruit takes up the identity of the word bananas, right? And that's important to know. It takes up the identity of what bananas was or what apples is, right? So as it's looping through this iterable, it takes up the identity of the item it's currently on. So right now in the second iteration, we are in the second item, which is apples. So for fruit and fruits, fruit is equivalent to the string of apples. We say, hey, if fruit is equal to the word apples, then I want to change fruit to the word kiwi. And it won't work. It won't do that, right? Hey, I currently can't switch this because I'm actively on this element. It's almost like saying, like you're driving your car and you're mid drive, you're going 80 miles per hour, right? And this analogy, it's the loop, right? You're in the middle of a for loop. The car is mid drive, and you're like, I don't like this Honda Civic, I'm gonna switch it over for a Toyota RAV4, whatever. You can't. I like yo, you can't switch me out, bro. Like you're in the middle of driving me, right? You can't just switch cars. You're mid drive, you're mid loop. Same concept here, right? You can't switch the value of whatever the fruit that you're actively on mid loop. And that was the issue. So you can't do that. Now, how did we fix this? Well, instead of actively iterating through the list itself, let's change the way that we iterate it. So now we say for I in range of the length of whatever fruits is. Right? Do you guys recall this method? Length. Length is going to return to you however long something is. Well, what value did you pass in? Well, the value that I passed in was a value called fruits. Well, what is this? It's a list. Okay. Well, here's my list. How long is this list? There's 3 items within here. So this method is going to return the integer of 3. Make sense so far? Now, what this is saying for I in range of 3, I want to iterate through a range of 3, right? So I want to do something 3 times, right? We're not iterating through some kind of interval. We're iterating 3 times. We're doing an action 3 different times, right? Make sense? That's what this is saying. Let's go back and write it how it was. Fruits. Okay, well, what do you want to do? The first time this runs, if you guys recall, what does I equal when we start a for loop using range? By default, it starts at 0, right? So let's get rid of this right here. I is going to equal 0. So for I in range of so on, right? So give me a second, my kid. Sorry, my kid was ringing the doorbell. Right? So when this runs, I is equal to 0. So for I in range of length of fruits, we are going to say if fruits at index I is equal to apples, then I want to say fruits at index I is equal to kiwi. So let's break it down. What is it specifying? When this first starts, I is going to equal to 0. So what do? If fruits index I. What is fruits index I? We're trying to access a list at what index? Well, when this first starts, I is going to equal to 0. So this is going to be pointing at bananas. Right? Notice, although it's pointing to it, you're not in the middle of a loop. You're not riding that car. Right? You're outside of the car, you're not running the car isn't being ran. You're iterating. This for loop is iterating through a range of numbers. It's not iterating through a list. You're leveraging the fact that you can set a range with the I to specify a specific index that you want to look into. Right? You want to check whatever is at index I of fruits. Well, this is bananas. The first time. Is it equal to apples? Well, no. So this won't run. It's going to finish the first iteration, and then it's going to increase by 1, right? Until it reaches the length of 3, which is what we set it to. Fruits at index I, which is 1, is going to point towards apples. Hey, is the item at index I of fruits equal to apples? That is true. Yes. Okay, well, now I want to directly manipulate whatever is at index I and switch it with kiwi. Right? The difference between these two is one, when you start the for loop, you are actively grabbing items from a list and picking it up and doing something with them, right? Or back to my analogy, you're driving the car, right? Whereas here, you're not iterating through the elements directly, you're going within a range of a number. Then you're using whatever number you're actively on to point to something in the list. Make sense so far? All right. I hope it does. If not, we'll talk about it after class on a one-on-one or however many people need any clarity. But all right. So we can switch things in a list, but you can't directly manipulate the item. You're gonna have to do it within a range, right? And then use that index to point to the item you want to switch over. So this is why this one didn't work. And now we can go ahead and move forward. All right. So when to choose what for loop to use, right? For I in X, when you want to iterate through the elements of a collection, right? Directly the elements. For I in range, when you need a loop with a specific number of iterations. You're not looping through any specific element. You're doing.
Some dinner to you or at dinner or after dinner. It's going through the voice right now.
Angel, you are
It's not
unmuted.
her fault.
I don't know if you're hot mic.
She found out during.
All right, I'm muting you. All right, moving forward. Angel, if I muted you by mistake and you're trying to ask a question, please let me know in the chat, and I apologize if I did. If not, going back to what I was discussing, for I in range, it iterates through a range, whatever range you specify. You can specify a start or an endpoint. For the enumerate method, you're able to specify the index that you're currently working on. Sorry, I didn't know there's two angels in here. Yeah, I meant Angel Mendoza. But yeah, my bad. And then the last one is being able to iterate through a dictionary, whether you're using the dot items, the dot keys, or values. Just being able to iterate through that kind of data structure is very helpful, right? Each one of these for loops serve their own purpose. So when you use a specific one is going to be dictated by the scenario, whatever type of data structure you're working with or you're presented with, right? Once again, Roger, how do I know which one I want to use? There's no right or wrong answer, right? Whatever data structure you decide to save information in, or whatever data structure you're being given, it's going to dictate what route you take. As long as you can reach an outcome, the road you took to get there doesn't really matter for now, right? As you progress through your time here, you'll find more efficient ways of doing that, but that all comes with time. All right, so we talked about a for loop. The next loop we're going to talk about is going to be a while loop, right? Which is a little bit different than what a for loop does, right? A while loop is going to execute a piece of code as long as a condition is met, right? The for loop, it iterated through how many items a list might have, right? We're able to iterate through a specific range of numbers, right? It was dictated by a numeric value, right? By how big something may be, whether it's how big an element is or how big a number is. The while loop is a little bit different, right? The while loop is going to do something until something is no longer true or no longer false, right? Whichever one you decide. And with while loops, it's going to be one of the first times that you might encounter an infinite loop, right? And an infinite loop, it's essentially a loop that does not meet the condition and runs forever. You know, it's a little self-explanatory in the name, but you usually get these whenever you set or create a while loop improperly. You don't set some kind of break statement or condition for it to end, and we'll see how these work. I don't like this example because this example is a little intimidating right off the bat. So I'll create my own small example here. I'm gonna open up a code block. And what we're going to do is we're going to count to 10. Very simple, right? So I will create a variable here. I'll say count up is equal to 0, right? Very simple variable. And the way that we start a while loop is similar to how a for loop starts with for, the while loop is going to start with the keyword of while. So I'm going to say while, and you see here, it's a keyword, it's a reserved word, so it immediately changed colors. And then after the keyword while, you immediately start giving the condition that you want to set. For this specific scenario, my condition is while my variable of count up does not exceed the value of 10, right? So we're trying to count up. So ideally, I want to start at 0. And then once my number is greater than 10, I no longer want to count, right? There's no reason for that. That's going to be my condition. So while count up is less than 11, I want to do the following. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to print whatever count up is, right? So here is my variable that I'm using, like almost like a counter, right? The keyword while that's going to initialize my while loop. And then here we have the condition that I'm setting. When is the while loop going to end? Well, whenever count up is greater than 11. Whenever it's not greater than 11, it's going to do everything afterwards, right? And that's going to be to print the keyword count up. Now, as it stands right now, this while loop has no actual way to stop. You might think, oh, well, we set a condition, right? We said, hey, whenever, as long as count up, you know, it's less than 11, we're going to do this. So eventually, you know, once it is greater than 11, it'll break. Well, where are we increasing the value of count up? As of right now, nowhere. So although I'm going to print count up, I still need to be able to slowly, progressively change the value of count up. So eventually it does break out of this while loop, right? And that's how easy it is to end up with an infinite loop. So after I print out the current value of count up, I'm going to say count up plus equals 1. This is going to do is going to increment the value of count up by 1. So the first time this runs, it's going to print out 0 because count up is going to start at 0. It's then going to increase it by 1 and then resets. So then come back over here. It's going to check again. Hey, is count up still less than 11? Well, it sure is. So let's go ahead and do the following. I'm going to print what count up is, which at this point is going to be 1. It's then going to increase it again by another 1. So it should now be 2. And it's going to do this over and over again until eventually it no longer meets this condition, right? And once it does that, it's going to break out of this while loop and progress with the rest of my code. So once it's done, I'm going to print out, I am out of the while loop, just to kind of show you the start and the end. So let's go ahead and run this. And we see here that it does successfully go through this iteration. It prints out 0. And once it gets to 10, it resets, it goes back up, and it checks, hey, is count up less than 11? It says yes, so it prints out 10, which then increases to 11, it resets, and now count up is equal to 11, so it no longer passes this check, therefore breaking out of this while loop and printing out I am out of the while loop. Do I have any questions on how I was able to use the while loop?
So with the Python operands, you don't have to. Do you not have to have a less than or equal to 11? Like I was expecting that to still get up to 11 in the count.
It did. It did get up to 11.
Oh
Right?
yeah, zero based. I got you.
Right. So it got to 11, and then it checks, hey, is 11 less than 11? No. Right. So therefore it didn't print out 11. It broke out. I could do less than or equal to, and I believe it will print out 11 now, but once it gets to 12, it won't print that one out. And as you see here, we have the 11. So you can do that, less than or equal to, but I didn't want that. I just wanted to print up to 10. I could have done less than or equal to 10, and it would have given me the same result, up to 10. So whichever route you took, they both lead to the same one. So either one, it's okay. Make sense?
Yeah.
Right on. Any other questions? Right. So, I see your message, Dante, the DM. Thanks for letting me know. Appreciate it. But all right. So, we were able to use a conditional statement like less than equal or equal to. We can also use booleans, right? So I can say, we can do something like this. Hero is equal to 100. No, let's go with enemy is equal to 100. Right. And I can say, a lot. Let's see. No. What's a good example I can do? Alive is equal to true. While alive, print. I am still alive. Let's say, okay. Let's say the scenario is somebody is stuck in some kind of chamber and there's a gas leak, and they're losing health over time. We'll say health is equal to 100. And while they're alive, we just want them to let us know, hey, I'm still alive in here, right? Oh, what the heck? What happened? Oh no. I don't know what happened, but that's okay. All right, let's get back to it. I do apologize for that. I don't know what happened. We'll say alive is equal to true. And I'm just kind of pulling this out of thin air, so I do apologize if not the best example. We can say health is equal to 100. Think of it as like, some person is like in some kind of environment with like poison gas or like, um, you know, whatever, war zone. Yeah, like the cloud is coming in. Sure. Right. And we can say while alive, I want to say print I am still alive. Let the teammates know that they're still alive. And then we're gonna lose some health. Health minus equals 10. Um, right. And then we'll say if health is less than 50, I want to print out I need a health pack, right? Or something like that, or a health potion. And then we can say if health is equal to 0, print I am no longer, or player has died. And then we can set alive is equal to true. Or false, my bad. This is kind of just out of thin air, so let's see how this works. Oh no, that isn't wrong. Let's stop this. And this is how easy it was to set up an infinite loop. Notice that this is still running. And just kept printing something out, right? We did this wrong. How do I Control C? No, stop it. Jupyter Notebooks is not.
At the top right there, there's an interrupt button. Next to.
Oh, here
left.
it is. Well, that's what this should have been, but it's not doing it, unfortunately. I'm just gonna refresh this page. It's because I did it a little wrong. Let's go ahead and fix this. What'd you do in if statement? That should fix it. The elif didn't help it. Yeah, forever loop. It's called infinite loop, Angelica. Get the terminology right. Jesus. Yeah, that was an infinite loop, right? So and that's how easy it is to set up, right? So when you don't add the condition to break it, it'll keep on going. Usually control C should interrupt it. Or Command C. But Jupyter Notebooks is a little weird. I tried pressing the button on the left side, but it didn't want to work, and that's okay. So here we go. Let's go ahead and switch this to if instead. And now for sure this will run. And there you go. The elif is really what was killing it, right? So we're alive. Let me do one more thing. Print the health out because this doesn't really print health. So I can see, right? So I'm alive, but my health's ticking. I'm losing health. I get to 50. It should have printed out. I'm still alive beforehand, but it's okay, no biggie. But here we see I'm still alive is being printed out. Eventually I get to 0. This should not have printed. It's not the perfect right. I kind of just pulled it out of thin air. But notice how we're able to do a for loop, and we use the conditional statement of a Boolean to set some kind of condition. And honestly, this is very down and dirty, and out of nowhere. But this is exactly how video games work, to be honest, right? While you're alive, you can do everything else, and then eventually you can't do anything. While your game is running, it should be able to have your screen and update your screen and so on and so forth and take damage. But yeah, so you can use Booleans as well if you don't want to use like less than or greater than. But the point is like you can set some kind of condition, and then while the condition is met, you will do the following until it no longer can't, right? So it's a very powerful loop, but it's very easy to have it break on you. So just be aware that if you are working on coding challenges on platforms like LeetCode or Code Wars, and you're trying to use a loop, almost every single time that I try using a while loop in LeetCode, it failed, right? Because there is so many iterations that LeetCode will allow you to run before it exceeds and it times out. So while loops are not the most effective when you're, the most effective way of handling a coding challenge, because usually it will time out. It's way too many iterations, and that the platform can't support it, right? So just be aware of that. So while if you try to use them in LeetCode, sometimes more like even though the code's right, and eventually it will reach an outcome because it's not efficient and it's taking too long, you might get an error, right? Especially with some of these platforms because they'll have different test cases where the values are so massive that it's going to force you to run multiple iterations, therefore leading you to a timeout. So just be aware of that. While they're very powerful, but they will do you dirty if you try to use them in a challenge like that. So here is a much more complex version of using a while. I didn't want to show you guys this right off the bat because it might get a little confusing. The very first thing here that you see in this code snippet is something we have not seen yet, and you really won't see except this one example. But the importation of different libraries. All right. So one of the cool things about Python is that there's a lot of pre-built stuff that comes with Python. You just don't see them. Some things are automatically by default in Python, right? So like very small functions, as you may have seen, like like using stuff like to upper or upper, capitalizing stuff, title, capitalization, right? The length method, those are just basic functions. But there are some other functions that are helpful that give you quality of life in coding, but you don't necessarily need all the time. And because of that, they get added what we call essentially like libraries, or they're essentially just extra files that code additional functions that aren't necessarily used as often, but still hold a purpose that allow you as a developer to leverage to make your life as a developer easier, right? And one of those is being able to generate a random number. And you'll see other libraries, for example, like more complex versions of math, right? So like sine, cosine, like very specific math operations. And I'm not a math whiz, so we can just go ahead and check real quick. But you can see the different libraries that come with Python. We scroll down, I should be able to find Python math somewhere around here. Here's the modules. Where you at, my friend? Python math. There we go. Right, so there's a bunch of methods that come with Python math. And it's not what I was looking for. Where is the rest of your stuff? This is updated because this wasn't like this before. Here we go. The math module, right? Here we go. I don't know what half this stuff is. I ain't gonna lie to you, right? I'm not educated as some of y'all, so I don't know all of these, but you see how some of these are very helpful. Degrees, distance, and so on and so forth. Floor, I'm sure you've seen that. Rounds the number down to the nearest integer. I think I talked about this one briefly. But there's some other stuff that does stuff that I'm not too familiar with. Returns the base -10 logarithm of x, whatever that means, nerds. But you can use these if you want, but these are additional libraries that come with Python that you can import to use, but they're not used as often, so they're not just automatically there. You could import the entire library. Most people just import the function they're trying to use. And one of those is going to be the random module. And I think I can find it here, Python random. Here, random module. And we'll use this so I can show you what type of methods or functions come with it. Specifically, the one that we're going to be using is going to be randint. Here we go, which returns a random number between the given range, right? And this is pretty useful, especially when you're trying to randomize stuff in your code. For example, if you try to make a guessing game where you ask the user, "Hey, guess a number between 1 and 100," it would be pretty lame to hard code the answer like every single time. Like that's not much of a guessing game. So you can leverage modules like this to be able to have additional functionality. Now, there's actual code behind these. Someone had to create this module to be able to generate a random number for you. I don't know how it works, so don't even bother asking me because I don't have an answer for you. But just know that these functions are available for you and very common. So we're going to use that here. And the way that this works is you literally just type in import. If it's a module that it came with the installation of Python, you're typically able to just be able to do import and then the name of the module. Or what you can also do is import the method specifically using dot notation. So you can say random.randint. Okay. And why isn't that working? Import. Oh, I know why. From random imports rand int. There we go. So you can specify one module that you want to import, or if you're lazy, you can just import the entire damn thing, which will then give you access to every single method. The downside to doing something like this, oh, my bad. Let me go type in import. The downside to importing the entire module is when you want to use a specific method that comes from this module, you have to prefix the method by the module you're trying to reference, which is what you see here. You see random dot rand int. This lets your Python file know, hey, I'm trying to use the random module I imported, and from this module, I want to use the randit method that comes from it. Well, what exactly is this? Well, I can right click it and click on go to definition, and it'll actually open it up. Look at this at the very top. It's random.py. This is literally a Python file, right? It came with the installation of Python. You didn't see it. And this is actual code, right? There's a lot of notes here, and they use other libraries to help make this. But you can scroll down this, and you can actually see where this random module is written at. And a lot of this is going to be out of scope, and you probably won't understand half of this. I just want to show you that this is an external file that was installed when you install Python, and you have access to. So it's just another Python file you're using. That's really what a module is. It's just another file with already pre-built functions in it. Make sense? Do I have any questions about modules?
Can you select a specific element? Like if you were to look in as you are right now in the actual code breakdown, can I go random dot randit dot like the normal variant self the definition normal variant? Can you pick a specific um value out of that randit instead of the whole library if you just need that specific value or function?
Yeah. Just like I showed you, right? So right here, we're importing the entire module. I'm assuming this is what you're referring to. If I didn't want all these other functions, which is the correct way of doing this, you do not want to import the entire module, right? That's not good practice. You have a bunch of random BS that you don't need. And imagine you do this for other modules too. It's just gonna increase the how much shit you're using. Oh, curse my language. But so the way you want to do this is you want to specify from where you want to import from random, right? Import rand int, right? This is very specific. The way that you type this out, you want to specify from where you want to import something, and then specify what you want to import, right? Whereas before, if you just want to import the entirety of it, you would just say import random, right? So the verbiage is specific. If you do it any other way, you'll get an error. But yeah. So now you have access to randint, and I should be able to say rand int. Yeah. See, now I don't need the random prefix whenever I use this function. You can even give this an alias. All right. Let's say this method is too long to type out. I'm gonna use it multiple times. I'm not about to type randint every single time. Like whatever. I can say as R. And now it gives you the alias of R. So instead of typing out random, I just use R. So I can give it an alias specifically so I can use it to call it. Cool. So a couple ways of doing it. There's less than that about this. I just want to show you how this works. But all right, moving forward, I'm gonna put it back to how it was initially, so we're all on the same page. In this code snippet, we are importing the module random, and I'm leveraging the method randint. And it takes 2 parameters, I'm pretty sure. I think there might be an additional one, but for sure it takes 2. Yeah, okay, just 2. See, I'm never wrong. Syntax, start and stop, right? So it's going to take the start of your range and the end of a range, right? Uh, and then when this runs, it's going to automatically just give you a random number between these two. It's going to save it to file size. They create a variable called progress, which is set to 0. We're going to run this and we're going to print out what file size is. So we'll be able to see what the random number that was generated from the start. We'll be able to see that. And then they use a while loop where they say while progress, which is set to 0, is less than file size, which is the random generated number, I want to increase my progress by 1. And there's some if statements here where we do some quick maths where we are checking the file size, we do some math and round it up, and we're essentially printing out or we're creating some kind of loading bar. And it'll be easier if I show it to you. Here we see I printed out. Here we have the number. It's still running. You see how this is ticking? It's running this. It's just a very big number. Here we go. Now it says file is 50% full. So it's literally replicating like the loading process of something, right? Which is pretty cool. And now it says done writing. I wasn't really doing anything. All I was doing was increasing the value of progress by 1 point until eventually, once it reaches the size of whatever file size was, and then it prints out done writing. But it essentially replicated the process of progress, right? Which is pretty cool. All right, so this was just a very quick example of how you can use the while loop. Do you have any questions about this code snippet? All right. All right, break and continue. These are going to be your friends for working with loops. Both these have their own place in time. The break statement is going to terminate the first for or while loop it is nested under. This is very helpful. You can use this link. It should take you to somewhere you can learn more about it if you want to use it. And then other examples. We're not going to get too much into it. But the break allows you to get out of a loop, right? Let's say you're looking through a list, right? A list of random numbers from 1 to 1,000,000. You're looking for a specific number, 3,480, right? That's a very random number, but you're probably going to encounter 3,480 pretty early on in a list with over 1,000,000 numbers, right? Does it make sense to continue your for loop to iterate through every single item in this list after you already found the number you're looking for? Probably not. So we need a way to exit out of this loop the moment that we find it. And the break statement is going to allow us to do that, right? Here's a very quick example of this, right? Let's say we have list is equal to, I don't want to use keywords, nums is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'm gonna say for num in nums, if num is equal to 3, break, or let's say print found it, print no. Right. So here we do a for loop where we iterate through this list and we're looking for the number 3. Now, when we find it, I want to print out that I found it and I want to get out of this for loop. There's no reason why I should continue iterating through this entire list of numbers. Right now, it seems insignificant because it's only 10 values, but the more values you have, the more important this becomes. Now, if it doesn't equal 3, then I shouldn't print found it and I shouldn't break out. I should just automatically print no. And maybe it'll make more sense if I put else, so you're not confused. right? This way, if it does not equal 3, I'm just going to print out the number I'm on. And I'm able to print out the 1 and the 2, but once it's equal to 3, I found it, and I now leave the loop, right? So break is going to be your friend to leave out of a loop, whether it's a loop, a for loop, or a while loop. Both of these will work with the break statement. All right, so how do we break out of a loop? By using the break statement. Do I have any questions on the break so far? All right. Here is the actual example that came with your curriculum. We have the value called cookies saved to 9. Actually, before we continue, I want to put a quick pause. It is 8:01. I don't want to steal your break from you. Let's go ahead and come back at 8:11, and we'll finish off the class. Get back to it. Welcome back, everybody. So before we broke off, we were talking about the break statement, right? And here we have a very specific example where we have a variable called cookies with the value of 9, an integer of 9. And then we have students here, a bunch of different names here. It looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different students within this list. We initiate a for loop for student and students. All right, so we are iterating through this list of students. And as we iterate through, we conduct an if-else check. All right, we see if cookies is greater than 0. So before we even do anything, we want to make sure that we have enough cookies to actually distribute. And in the event that we do have enough cookies, we say print. We print out currently the student that we are actively iterating through. And we say that that person gets a cookie. And then we also actively update the count of cookies by removing 1 to ensure that it reflects the fact that we've given a cookie out. Right. Now, in the event cookies is not greater than 0, then that means we don't have any cookies to give out. So in that scenario, we should be able to print out, sorry, student, whoever this student is that we're currently iterating through, we're out of cookies. Better luck next time. And then finally, we break, right? So let's go ahead and run this. We see here that this runs successfully. It gets to Aaron, gets a cookie, Nick gets a cookie, so on and so forth. And then it gets to Guillermo. He gets cookie, but after Guillermo says, sorry, Kevin, we are out of cookies. Better luck next time. And that was it, no one else got any cookies, but successfully we were able to break out of that statement, not continue looping through, and let them know, hey, we don't have any cookies, right? Do you have any questions of how the break statement works? Awesome. Let's go ahead and continue forward. Thomas, I see your message. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. But I want you to remind you guys that this week we do have class Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So we are back to the regular schedule. I apologize for the first week, but tomorrow is our next class. All right. So continuing, the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be the continue statement, right? And just as helpful as the break, but not the same functionality, right? The continue statement is primarily used to skip items in collection when a certain condition is met, right? The best way I can think of it is kind of like iterating through a list of numbers from like a range of 1 to 200, and then whenever you get to a value that is even, you print out even, and if it's not even, you just want to skip that number, right? There's no reason to say that a number is even if it's not even. So you skip it. That's one quick scenario I can think of. How do we do that, right? If I say for I in range, and we'll keep it simple, we're gonna say 10. How can I check if a number is even or if it's not? Is it a very common scenario, by the way?
Can you do divisible by 2 with no remainder?
Yeah, that's exactly how we would do that, right? We will get the number, and then we would use what the actual terminology for that will be the modulus, right? We would use the modulus operator to check if we have anything remainder when dividing, and if so, then that means it's not even, right? But if we divide a number by 2 and there's nothing remainder, then it successfully divided with nothing remaining, right? So we can say if I modulus 2 is equal to 0, that means we got nothing as remainder. Then I want to say print even, right? Else we can say continue. And this will still work. This is a very, like, even if we didn't use continue and we just left it by itself, it'll probably still work. I'm just kind of using this example. It's a very, very simple example where I can add the continue statement in here to explain it. But now when I run this, let's actually add the number in here so we can see it. We'll say, let me use an F string. And then I'm going to add I in here. There we go. So we can see what number we're on. And maybe this is not the, let's start at 1. And let's go to 11. And there we go. Now we're getting something a little bit more efficient. So we're able to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So it does print out the even numbers from the ratio of 1 to 10. We had to update the start point because it was starting at 0, which is not really a number that in this context for us. And we wanted the 10 to also be printed out, so we updated the stop point to 11. But notice that we're able to print, and the continue statement will just continue moving forward, right? But we can also say something like, if I is equal to 5, continue. Else, print, we'll say I, say odd. I wonder how this will work. Elif. There we go. So we can do even and odd, right? We can print out whether a number is even or whether a number is odd. But let's say specifically we don't want 5s, right? We don't want the number 5. So I'm able to do both. I can say even, odd, in just that one specific scenario, that one number, because I'm just very hateful to the number 5. I just want to skip it, right? Because I don't like 5. So I can just press continue, right? So here I'm able to do 2 different things and skip it in a very like specific scenario, right? Here's a much better example of how we could use the continue statement, right? So odd, even, even. Yeah, it checks out. Any questions on this scenario? All right. Yeah, these are very simple, but very important to know. All right, here is the next example. We have, once again, the student scenario, right? There should be like 4, 5, like 11, right? We have the students, but now we have a new list, and this new list is people who have completed a survey. And I'm pretty sure we saw a something very similar to this. I want to say Monday when we talked about our different sequences, right? Specifically sets. So here we have the completed survey, right? So we have some people who continue or who've completed, and if they completed, then we don't need to remind them to complete it. But for those who have not completed a survey, we need to let them know, maybe even send them an email that they should complete it. So we iterate through the list of students. And then we're going to check if the student that we're currently iterating through from our database, are they currently in our roster for those who have completed our survey? And if so, then we want to continue. right? We don't need that. Or we can give them a very specific email like, oh, thank you for completing our survey, right? I don't know, something like that. But in this scenario, we're going to use the continue method. But if they're not in the completed survey, then I want to let them know, hey, like you need to complete the survey, right? And this works as intended. Everyone except Nick, Tish, and myself, Roger, does not need to complete it. Everybody else gets an angry email. Here is another scenario of when we can use continue. A little bit more code to digest. So here we have a list of odd nums, which is empty. We start a for loop in the range of 1 to 10,000, right? As we go through this, we are converting that integer into a string. Notice that they're typecasting this, right? They're converting it to a string, and then they're adding it to this list called all nums. So by the end of this for loop right here, this list should be about 10,000 digits long, with specific numbers, right? The next part of this code is a list called process nums, which is an empty list. We once again now start another for loop. This time we're iterating through the list of numbers that was from 1 to 10,000. And as we iterate, we're going to check if 9 is in that number or if 0 is in that number, then we want to continue. Otherwise, we want to add that number to that new list we have created called process nums. So we should be able to receive back a list where there is no numbers that have either the 9 or the 0. Right? And we see a very quick snippet here of the process nums and all nums. The length. Notice the difference. The original list of all numbers from 1 to 10,000 is as I expected, right? There's 10,000 numbers. But notice what happens when we process the numbers and remove any number that had the number 9 or 0 in it. They significantly dropped, right? Or the length of the amount of a number significantly dropped. We have less than half. So this already tells me that at least half of the numbers have a 9 or a 0 in there. And then we see a very small code snippet of that. And notice that the process numbers does not have a 9 and does not have a 10. All right, so we're able to see the effect of both of these, which is pretty cool. And that's going to conclude the continue keyword. So do I have any questions about continue? All right. Loops with data structures. Now, we kind of already touched upon these, so if we already touched upon it, we won't spend too much time on it. But we talked about iterating through a string, right? So you can loop through the characters in a string using a for loop. So here is our string text of hello world. Very common first program for most people, typing or printing out hello world in their screen. And we're able to iterate through every individual character and print it out. We even saw what happens if we try to change a character and how that doesn't work, because as we already know, strings are immutable, so you cannot change them. So we're able to iterate the strings. Loops are often used to iterate through the elements of a list. We saw this already. We're able to iterate through elements of an iterable. Notice that this one, it uses the range method to iterate through a specific range of a number. Well, what number is that? Well, it says the length of auto branch. Well, however long this list is, that's how the range that I'm looping through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is saying for I in range of 6. And then it's using this number to be able to access different elements within here and then remove it. And it looks like it's specifically trying to find the value of Chevrolet and then remove it from the list and then exit out of this for loop. And when we run this, we see here that that Chevrolet is no longer present within the list. So we can iterate through lists, either the element itself or iterate through a range to be able to actually manipulate that list. Tuples, we've seen tuples already. Coordinates for coordinate and coordinates, we can print coordinates. So you can iterate through tuples as well, very similar to a list. We talked about dictionaries as well. So I won't harp too much on it. If you want to kind of come back here and look through it, you definitely can. But I think I already spent a lot of time on this. We talked about using the dot values method as well, and how that works, how it returns to you a list-like object of the values of a dictionary. And when we talked about the dot items as well. These are all items I spent a lot of time on. Okay, here is where it starts diverging to something new. Nested loops, right? It is fairly common to handle nested data, right? Especially when working with your with JSON, right? When you start working with input that you're receiving from your front end into your back end, you're gonna find yourself working with nested loops. And let me show you a prime example. Poke API. You're gonna see this very often. This is out of scope. APIs are out of scope for you guys. I'm just trying to show you an example of, like, let's see, whose favorite Pokemon is Charizard. I like Dragonite. Andrew says API. You might know about APIs, Andrew, but a lot of these people in here probably don't, so we're not gonna get too into it. But I'm using this API to show you guys an example of nested data. And this is something that you're going to see later, right? This is essentially a dictionary. In JavaScript, we call this an object. But notice that there's key value pairs. The values is a list of another dictionary. And it just really, really nested, right? So it's going to be very important for you guys to get familiar with, parsing through nested data structures and feel comfortable with it, right? Because they can get very intimidating very, very quickly. Just look at this. This is all the data on Dragonite. Right. I like Poke API. We use Poke API a lot in Platoon because it's easy to relate. So this won't be the first or last time that you see Poke API, especially if you move forward with us. Look at this. Oh Lord. Look how crazy this is. So nested loops, nested dictionaries, nested anything. It's something that's going to be very common in your day-to-day life. And I know it's a little intimidating at first to see this, like, well, there's a lot of data, but it gets easier with time, I promise you. It's just one of those that you have to see it to feel comfortable with it. So this is just a quick example to show you why it's important to understand how to read through nested data, because you're going to be dealing with this a lot. I see people talking about this API. You guys know about APIs, but you guys don't know Python. What's this? Andrew, Thomas, any comments?
I missed what you said. What'd you say?
Yeah, how are you guys so familiar with APIs or the Poke API? But
I've done a boot camp before.
okay, that makes sense. What language did you guys use, Thomas?
JavaScript.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Andrew? Okay, interesting. All right, so yeah, we have some people here with some experience, which is awesome. I'm sure you guys will be the go-to guys in your cohorts. Yeah, so cool stuff. Yeah, the Poke API is super cool. We use it a lot. If you guys decide to move forward and get accepted to this next program and take part in Foundations of Programming, who here is trying to do a Avenger Platoon? Has any of you guys already gone through the process, part 2? I'm assuming no. If we're all here, is that correct? Okay. Yeah, when you guys, I say win, right? Because positive. When you guys get accepted, um, into Avenger Platoon, you will be given the option to take part in Foundations of Programming. It's an optional course that uh is literally like a week after this course. It's more in depth. It's Monday through Friday, right? 5 days a week. For from 5:30 to 9, where I teach you the basic foundation to get you prepared for the immersive program, or any other program. If you're even if you're doing evening or weekend or DevOps, it's still very helpful. They end up aligning. Uh, where you'll get another Python crash course in like a day. We'll talk about JavaScript, HTML, CSS. We will build small web applications. We'll talk about APIs. We'll even build like a Pokemon team using this API. So we'll do stuff like that. We'll work with object-oriented programming. We will create a game. We'll recreate the Space Invaders games for you oldies, who have played like Galactica, I think it was called. Galactica, I don't know what it's called. So we'll recreate that using Python. I'll show you how to do that in a day or two. Um, so we'll be able to do stuff like that. If you guys decide to move forward and get accepted, that program starts like a week after this one. I teach that as well. Galaga, your age is showing, Scott. But yeah. So if you guys do get accepted to this following one or any other one, I teach that program 3 times a year. So hopefully I can see you guys there. But yeah, we'll expand more on APIs, and you'll see this more often. I just want to give my little spiel to see if I can recruit more people. But yeah, so hopefully I can see you guys there too. But anyways, let's go ahead and move forward. So this is like the nested data and why it's important, right? And it starts very simple with small stuff like this, right? Nested loops, right? Or nested data structures, and then how to handle them. When you guys go ahead and take your live technical assessment, or I believe you guys have your coding challenges. Scott said we've all been tricked by a recruiter once already. Not me. I knew exactly what I was doing. Not many people can say that, but I knew what I wanted. And I got it. It wasn't much, but I got it. But yeah, so here's our nested loops. We've seen it before that you can have nested data types. The outside loop is here explained or shown by the blue brackets, right? And typically your IDEs or will do a good job at color coding where stuff starts and ends, right? So the outside we see here, the top level or the root of this data structure is a list, right? And the first item itself is another list. So how do we access? So we saw that we can use for loops to iterate through a list, but what if we have a list of lists? What then? Well, it's pretty much the exact same thing. All right, so for row and nested lists, this is going to start an initial for loop that's going to allow you to iterate through every single list. So when this for loop starts, the first item that you're going to grab, right? Let's do some pseudocode. First iteration, you will literally have the list of 1, 2, 3, right? So the first time this runs, first iteration, you have 1, 2, 3. So it's kind of like right here, right? 1, 2, 3. So what happens after it grabs the first item? Immediately following the start of the outer for loop, we grab the first item and immediately start another for loop. We say for item in row. Well, what is row? Right here. We defined it in the outer for loop. We start the for loop and we grab the first item. Row grabs the first item, 1, 2, 3. And using this temporary variable of row, we now start another for loop within here. We say for item in row, right? This now started a for loop on the very first item we got on the outer loop. And we say print item. And let's see what it does. Right? It does grab that first item, which is 1. Then it goes to 2, and then 3. right? Notice that it goes through the entirety of this inner for loop before it moves to the next item in the outer loop, right? Let's see another example. I can say for let's say nums is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can say for num and nums print num. Or let's not use num. It's gonna be very confusing. Let's say a. For a in nums, print a. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what if every single time that I iterate through nums, I start another for loop for b in nums. Print b. Let's see how this works. Let's actually remove this. Let's change it up. Let's say a comma b to see it side by side. There we go. Right. So now we have an nested for loop. The outer for loop stayed the same. We did a for loop through the list for a in nums. It grabs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But every time this outer for loop does an iteration, it's going to start this inner for loop. This outer for loop cannot move forward to its next iteration until this for loop finishes running. Not running one iteration, running all of its iterations. So for a and num starts, it starts at the beginning, so it grabs 1. Right. So with 1 selected, while 1 is selected, we then start an inner for loop and say for b in nums, and we print out whatever a is and whatever b is. So it prints out 1 of 1. All right, cool. This inner for loop finishes first iteration. Now this one, say first iteration. Right. This finishes its first iteration. Now this will go to its second iteration. Well, what is this becoming now? Well, now this is also looping through nums. This becomes 2. The outer for loop is still in its first iteration until this finishes its entirety of its sequence. So now it prints out 1, 2. This goes to its third iteration. This becomes 3. And prints out 1, 3. And it does this until it gets to 5. 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. This now finished its first full for loop. Finally, the outer for loop can move forward. And this now becomes 2. Right? And that's how this works. Right? The outer for loop or the loop above it cannot move forward until the loop directly below it finishes doing what it should be doing. And we get that 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, and then it resets 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Therefore, giving us 25 outputs. Do you have any question on this? Of how nested loops work?
Is this a situation where you have to be really careful of how you want to phrase your information recall? Because if you don't do it correctly, it could actually end up taking excessive amount of memory and crashing the program.
I'll tell you this. The more nested loops you have, the worse your program will be. Nested for loops are not bad, but they're not good. And I hate saying that as a disclaimer so early on to you guys coding because you, for some reason, I don't know why every time I tell you guys this, you guys end up fearing nested for loops. You can do nested for loops, but where it really becomes an issue is when your data structures end up being really big, right? When you have a million different values, and for every million values, you have another million operations. That becomes a huge problem, right? It takes forever to run that. So it does become a performance issue, right? Uh, so it's not like forbidden, but depending on what you're working on, how much data you're managing, what your job really is, what your code is going to be working with, will dictate, how you handle certain operations. If you're handling large pieces of data like that, and you're having to do something like this to acquire something, then maybe you shouldn't have it in the list. You probably should have it like in a dictionary, right? Because then you can use key value pairs to access it. At this point, if you have millions of different things in one list and you're having to do a for loop to access something like that, that becomes extremely inefficient. And there's probably a much better way of doing it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it in a roundabout way. What I was saying is like because you'd be pulling up so much data or information for this kind of for loop, it could become memory intensive or processes, and then it could actually crash it, or you can get stuck in the loop because it's not finding the value it's looking for. Correct?
And it'll take forever. Yes, it will take forever. I haven't seen it crash it, but it does take a lot of processing power. And you won't really find yourself in a situation like that too often. Like pretty rarely, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, in theory, that would happen, right? But don't be afraid of nested for loops. Like it's okay. You can use nested for loops. There's nothing wrong with it. What's a problem is if you do something like this. 3 nested for loops. Now you're getting out of hand. 2 is okay. And you do 3 nested for loops, you have an issue, right? You did something wrong. You messed up. Right. This is really, really bad. Right. For example, if I had I'm using extra numbers because it helps me. I don't know why. How many iterations would it take? How many iterations is this?
100 iterations.
The 100 iterations. For 10 numbers, if I did a nested for loops, it would be 100 iterations. How many is this?
1,000.
It's 10 cubed. What is that? I don't know what 10 cube is. My math
Wouldn't
sucks.
it be 1,000?
Is it 1,000? I have no idea. 10 times 10 times 10. Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
got
it'll be
10,
1,000.
100,000. Yeah.
Yep. So 10 times 10 is 100 times 10 is 1,000. So that's 1,000 iterations for a list of 10 items. That's 1,000 different iterations of you doing something. Right? That's where it becomes a huge issue. This 10 items, and somehow you end up doing 1,000 iterations. That's no bueno. So 3 nested for loops like this is really bad. This is manageable. It's okay, right? When you start getting issues is when you do when it's like cubed. Make sense? So don't fear nested for loops. You can use them. They're perfectly fine. It's when you start getting to the nested for loops with 3 for loops back to back. No bueno. What about this? Is this good or bad? It's a trick question. Because I haven't taught you guys this.
Wouldn't that just be one iteration under each value?
Yeah. No impact. This won't affect the efficiency of your code. This is fine. This is more than fine. It's when you start nesting stuff and you're just the power or whatever it is. That's where it becomes an issue. Right. So this is perfectly fine. Doesn't matter how many for loops you have. It's when you start nesting them within nests where it becomes an issue. But yeah, good answer. All right, moving forward. That's your nested for loops. If you want more explanation for it, if you're still lost, we can handle it after class. Data manipulation. We learned about basic concepts for Python, data types, data collections, functions. Yep. All right, data manipulation. So here, what do we have here? What is this? Oh, what's in the name? Never mind. We have a set. We have a set of what seems to be tuples, right? A set of tuples, which look to me maybe Greek coordinates, right? All right, we have coordinates here, coordinate pairs. It's a set of coordinates. We loop through for coordinate pair in my set. So as we loop through this set, we are getting tuples back of different coordinate pairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 pairs in here. We print out the string coordinate followed by the pair that we're iterating through. But let me just run this to see what it gives me back. Well, it is this. Okay. All right, so it grabs this one right here, which we can see here, 34. It match. Ooh, this does not match actually. This is wrong. Is it because, oh, I know why. What do we know about sets?
They're not
Why?
ordered.
Yeah, they're not in order. Yeah. Good catch, Scott. Good catch. Yeah, so it's not in order, so this won't look exactly how this is typed out. But this successfully grabs the pairs of coordinates out here. It prints them out, with a string of coordinate. The second part is we do a for item and chord pair. It starts a nested for loop through the tuple itself, right? So not many iterations. It's 2 iterations, right? But for every item, it grabs it and it rounds it down to the placement of 2, right? So notice here 36.956, so on and so forth. It gets rounded down. Or actually rounded up, right? But to only 2 decimal points, right? With a precision of only 2. And it does that for both, right? It also formats it in this string formats. And then afterwards, it takes the string of a dotted line with space and it multiplies it by 15, giving you this appearance. Pretty cool, right? So we're able to go through the set, grab individual coordinate pairs, give you the rounded degree, and then separate them with this nice dash. Therefore, give you this output. So data manipulation, right? With literally a set of tuples, we're able to grab every individual one, give you a rounded version of it with this is not really a good precision, but with 2 decimal placements. And then we're also able to separate to make it visually appealing, right? So data manipulation is just a nice example. Do you have any questions on this? Here are some data manipulation exercises if you want to try it. These are actually very, very helpful. And these should be fun. This is gonna be one of the first exercises you can actually use for loops on, which is pretty cool. Don't get intimidated with this large piece of data. This is literally just a list, as you see here, a list of strings. And it looks like these strings are once again coordinates. Notice that it's numbers with a letter, right? F W W W N. These are directions, right? North, south, east, west. As I go through these, we could probably identify some patterns. Um, Here's one right off the bat. This one has two spaces at the end of it, right? So the length is not the same as the other one, or the length actually might be the same, but there's two spaces to the end. This one right here has three spaces at the start, two spaces, one spaces. So I already see here, just from looking at this data as I'm parsing through it, that not all of the items in this list are the same. Right, and I'm gonna leave the rest of this to you guys. Look, this has space before and after. Um, and I'm gonna go ahead and say, read up here, given the list of coordinates which may have formatting anomalies, format them with a decimal point, right? In this listing, latitude coordinates denoted with N or S, right? So if they have an N or S at the end of it, we know these are latitude coordinates. These should have 2 digits with 4 decimal degrees, and longitude has 3 digits with 4 decimal degrees, right? And then you even see an example of what this should look like, right? Coordinates in your results should look like this, where the latitude, once again, just like the description said, 2 digits with 4 decimal degrees, right? And longitude being 3 digits with 4 decimal degrees, right? So using this example, you should be able to parse through this list of coordinates, and then have an updated version where everything's formatted, where you don't have these weird spaces, and they should all have decimals. And then the rest of these exercises are going to build off of that. So this is a really nice exercise to work on your for loops, manipulating data structures. So pretty cool. Do you have any questions on this? This is going to be part of the homework or the work for you guys. There's a stretch goal here. This shouldn't be too hard either. But then you have additional assignments, and for some even more extra work, we have the exercises as always, right? And now if you're still craving more work, you can go back to the exercises that we couldn't complete because the lack of knowledge in for loops, right? So you have some stuff for you guys to try out after class or tomorrow or the weekend if you don't finish them. But that's going to conclude today's lecture. I know today was a lot of information. It was very heavy with for loops. And some additional content here and there. Do I have any questions before we stop the recording? All right. Actually, before we cut off, I want to give you guys a challenge. So stand by. Who here is familiar with BizzBuzz? Trevor, okay, okay. Just Trevor, nobody else? Thomas, I feared you would be Thomas. It's called BizzBuzz. The it's a problem which I would challenge you guys to try out. Let me go and share my screen. I was having a conversation with Jim. And although we have some mini projects in next week that can help bring it all together, the projects and the question that you're going to be asked for the technical assessment, they don't match the level, like the level of difficulty between those two are different. The projects that we will be tackling next week are significantly harder than anything you're going to be asked during the live technical assessment. And that's done on purpose. But at the same time, one thing that we noticed is that some students like don't know, like their biggest issue is that, or what we hear is like, I don't know if I'm ready, right? So I'm going to be giving you guys some problems today. I'll give you guys one tomorrow and some problems next week that you guys can go and tackle to know how confident or how you feel about your skills. So if you're wondering like, am I ready to take the live technical assessment? Hopefully after you complete these problems, you will feel a little bit confident about it. For those of you who are able to already solve this problem within an hour, with no help, then you're ready for the live technical assessment. And I say no help because you're not supposed to, right? Have your notes in front of you during the live technical assessment because you're going to be on camera with Guillermo and he'll be watching you, right? You'll be sharing your screen in some shape, way, or form, and he'll be watching you code. So I say with no notes. If you can handle like the problems that I'll be giving you within like at least an hour, I say at least because that's about how much you'll have. I think it's like 45 minutes without using like the notes and stuff, then you should in theory you should be good to go, right? So the first one I'll give you will be FizzBuzz. Let me. You can use HackerRank. I recommend HackerRank. Literally all it took was me going to Google, google.com, FizzBuzz, right? See you, Angel. I will stay here for another minute, Angel, so you can hear this part. But if not, that's okay too. But look up FizzBuzz. I would click on HackerRank. It's a little bit lower below. I like HackerRank. If you're familiar with LeetCode, you can use LeetCode too. But click on one of these, either HackerRank or FizzBuzz, and it'll bring you here. It'll ask you to sign in. But you'll have something similar to this where you have like the problem. If you want to see other people's submissions or your submissions, I think you can check these things right here. But stick to the problem and you'll read it. FizzBuzz is a very, very common coding challenge for like beginners or for like interviews for junior developers. Essentially, you're given the problem is that you have to write a short program that prints out each number from 1 to 100 on a new line, right? But depending on the number that you're iterating through, you're going to print one thing or another, right? If the number is a multiple of 3, then you're going to print out fizz. If it's a multiple of 5, then you print out buzz. If it's a multiple of both 3 and 5, you print out FizzBuzz, right? That's what the challenge is. When you get to these type of websites, typically you'll have like a selection to choose the language you want to work on. Because we're doing Python, go to Python. Python 3. And then you'll see this change. It look a little bit more familiar to something that you guys have done. This is actually, is this the answer? I think I have the answer. I'll delete it. Anyways, I think that was the answer. I'm just briefly looking at it. But your goal is to be able to complete this challenge. Whenever you're done putting your solution here, you run the code. It'll pass some tests. It'll run it against some tests, as you see here. If you pass all the tests, then you click on submit code. And then you'll see the test cases here, print out which ones you passed and which ones you failed. Give it a bit. It's probably gonna fail these. I hope it fails them. I don't know if this is the answer from the top of my head. It looks like the answer, to be fair. Yeah, it passed. But yeah, so check this stuff out, either FizzBuzz or LeetCode. Maybe LeetCode would be better. I don't think this is very good. Maybe HackerRank doesn't have a good version of it. LeetCode is another one. If you go to problems, you can search for it too. You just type in FizzBuzz, and it should be able to come out. There it is, FizzBuzz. It's an easy difficulty, so if you guys can complete this, you should be on the right track. I say right track, right? Notice that it looks very similar to HackerRank. Yeah, definitely try it out on LeetCode, I would say. Yeah. So I'll be giving you guys more problems. I'll give you one tomorrow, and then we'll get 3 more next week as well, additionally to what we are already going to be teaching. That way, you guys can kind of practice with these easy problems. And these problems will be implementing the concepts that we've been talking about. It won't be too difficult. If you guys can solve this while talking out loud about what you're doing, you're ready for your interview with Guillermo. So that's really what's going to happen. You'll be in a scenario where you're on some kind of call. Guillermo will give you his spiel, which is like, telling you, what you're going to be doing. And then he'll give you like a link to open up a problem very similar to this. And he'll be like, start when you're ready. And then you'll go. What we will be looking for will be specifically, can you talk code, right? can you talk about what you're doing? You know, do you know what you're doing? Like, you know, I'm creating a variable, right? I'm setting up a for loop here to iterate through, you know, this list or this string. I'm looking to see if, you know, as I'm looping through here, um, does any of the elements within the string match what I'm looking for? Yada yada, right? So can you explain what you're doing and why you're doing it? That's all we're looking for, right? So that's what we do. We finish the course. Do you have any questions?
I got a question for you after the class, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Well, time is 9. We are done here, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording now.